Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet my good friend, Susan Kinney. We discuss a 17-year career in the nonprofit business. We learn how she got there, where she worked before, what she's doing now, some of the great causes she's a part of, how businesses are contributing, and some of the value she's gained as an individual in these businesses. I know you're going to enjoy this. Everyone has something they're going to be able to take out of this. Give it a listen. Susan Kinney, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So we are longtime friends. Have you done the math on how long we've been friends? Is it 30 years?
28.
Yeah.
It'll be 28 years, I think, in October. So.
28 years we've been friends. So that's not why you're on the podcast here today. It is because we're friends. But more importantly, we wanted to talk about your career in general in the nonprofit business. And there is a lot of folks, including one of my kids, who are very interested in that field. And I had one professional acquaintance in the last month reach out and want to connect with you.
Absolutely,
and
she's lovely.
Get some information on this life in service, right?
Yes.
Marrying the work world with the life in service is kind of the theme I'm hoping to tap in here to today.
Perfect.
And so you're the queen. You're the queen of in my network of this. And so I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to meet with the Boardroom Sessions folks and get a chance to let them know how you did it, why you did it, what you do, what the business entails, etc.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So let's go back a little bit in history and start with our background, right? And so you and I met each other at Enterprise Rent-A-Car right after college.
Yep, we sure did. I moved here from Arizona to take the job, actually. I had planned on staying in Phoenix, but met a Southern California guy who said I needed to move here and said I met this really cool girl when my mom was renting a car, and I think you should get a job at this place. It never even crossed my mind. But, I moved out here and got the job, and I met a wonderful group of friends, and they're obviously lifelong friends.
We're still
such
all
as yourself.
friends,
Yeah,
and there's a whole lot, big, gigantic crew of us, and I think that's the one biggest, most positive thing that ever came out of that group of friends is we all are still together. We're still hanging out. We've been at each other's weddings. We've had dozens of weddings and friends.
50th birthday parties.
That's right. And kids and raising families together and all that fun stuff has been an amazing part. But let's not kid ourselves. That job blows. That job was
come
terrible.
on. It was a lot of work, but I'll tell you that I have not come across another organization that teaches kids right out of college how to do absolutely everything. I mean, we were doing customer service. We were doing sales. We were doing accounts receivable calls. We were doing marketing. We were washing the cars. We were looking into maintenance of cars. I mean, really, I ruined several pairs of shoes running around back and forth through parking lots.
I have visual memories of you with your feet sticking out of one end of the car, vacuuming the car on all fours on a Saturday, sweating in 80-degree plus heat. The job was not the greatest job.
It wasn't, but it was a great training ground. They did bring together a lot of like-minded, fun, driven sales professionals.
Agreed. And we definitely learned how to keep the books, and we learned how to run a profit, and we learned how to maximize the renting potential of your area and your deal. We learned teamwork between offices.
Yep.
We learned all that kind of fun stuff. But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No.
So we had a chance to grow up together there, and just about everybody that we aforementioned a minute ago, left. And we went and did other things, right?
Yes.
And so you went off into the work world, and you were doing things like you worked for CoreLink, you worked for staffing company called
Yep,
CoreLink,
did
right?
recruiting. So I'm
Placed some of our friends.
absolutely got some jobs for some folks. I really, when I look back, I think about that job as sort of maybe my first toe dip into helping people because I really, I love the sales aspect of it. As you know, I'm pretty competitive, but it was also helping people get jobs, which, when I look back now, it was kind of, I guess, gearing me towards this profession of service.
Yep.
So.
Then you got into the APW right line business, which was a complete shift for you. That was into the technology. That was more into my world.
Yeah,
We were making
technical
these-
sales wasn't. I have no clue how I got that job.
Well, the data center business was booming, and
It was.
lots of people were putting gear in racks. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if you guys have ever been to a data center or into the data center within a company of yours, you know that they have these large metal framed racks where the servers go and stack up in those racks. Susan was selling those and running around town trying to move product with a bunch of very technical folks, which is kind of a stretch, let's just
Yeah,
say.
oh, for sure. Because I have to admit, I actually measured some of these racks incorrectly. That was not good when you're trying to get these data centers up and then things won't fit inside your room.
Yeah, they have exact
Yeah.
specifications. We all know that, and that was a odd place for you to be. But at any rate, so when you were doing those jobs, even back in the day, I recall you were doing a lot of service work, right? You were raising money. You were probably
I did a couple fundraisers, team and training. Ran a couple marathons for the raising money for Leukemia Society. So our mutual friend Lori, who we met at Enterprise, got me into running. It was really more of a challenge rather than the fundraising part of it. But then when I got signed up, and they brought in this young boy to speak to us about why it was important to be fundraising along with the physical challenge of this race, I was hooked. And so I did that, couple marathons. Like I said, I did LA and I did the Cozumel one. And then I was a wish granter, had a roommate who was doing it, introduced me to it, and that was lovely from Make-A-Wish Foundation.
So what's a wish granter do?
Well, so the kids who are granted these wishes get to choose what they want to do. And so volunteers come in and they help support that wish. Some of these kids will, they'll do a trip or they'll, go to Disneyland or go to Hawaii or something like that. And if they choose that trip, the wish is being granted somewhere away from Orange County. So the wish granter, local wish granters here in Orange County, we were responsible for maybe doing a send-off party or, just trying to make it very, very special for the kids. So we did my first one that we were working with the boy, we went to Chuck E. Cheese and his mom went to UCI. So I contacted the basketball team to see if they would sign a basketball for him. So all the players signed the basketball for him. We had firefighters come because unfortunately they were called quite often to their home because he was sick. So we had them come to the kickoff party. And so just
you helped organize all that.
Anything to make it special.
You weren't necessarily going and finding the actual wish itself. They had another mechanism for
that
doing
was
that.
the child working with the program staff at Make-A-Wish. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's all volunteer work. That wasn't
that was all volunteer. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
That's some fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so with all of these things, you kind of had an inkling that was something that you were very, very interested in doing and felt compelled. But then 9/11 happened, right? And so tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know that I had an inkling that I could do that professionally. I just knew that I had my career path. I was just talking about this with another friend that, we were told graduate from college and get a job and then live your life so you can pay your bills and have a family. It was never go find your passion, go find, what's going to make you happy. I wound up at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I don't know that I put two and two together that renting cars was going to make me happy. I just knew I was going to get a paycheck, right? So the volunteer aspect of it was something that I enjoyed because I watched my mother do it her whole life, and I thought, okay, well, these go hand in hand. You have your job, and you don't necessarily love it, at least, my mindset. And then you do your volunteer work, and that's where you get your joy. So when 9/11 happened, obviously it rocked everybody's world. But I sat there and thought, well, I have to do something. I have to do something that matters. I'm not getting up every single day and fixing this hatred in our world, or making people feel safe, or what exactly I could do. I didn't really know what to do. And so here I am. Gosh, how many years ago was that? 19 years ago. I was 31 years old, and I went to my local Navy recruitment office, and I said,
To the Navy.
yeah, well, we're a Navy family. My grandfather and great uncles, and my nephew, actually, after all that, got into the Navy. And so, yeah, I went and I had a conversation, and I took the test, and they said I scored really high, on all the testing, and then they told me what I was going to make. And somehow my big heart to serve our country and make the world a better place just was like, well, I can't live like that. And so I didn't join the Navy, obviously. But then I made the decision then that I needed to marry my love of volunteering and giving back with a professional career. And so, believe it or not, it was a complete random phone call that I received. Actually, my husband at the time received a call. We were both working out of the house for our respective jobs, and he got a call from a recruiter saying, hey, I've got this job opportunity for you. And he said, I'm not looking to make a change, but my wife is. And he handed me the phone, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't think you can help me. I'm not looking to get into a sales job. I think I really want to find a job within the nonprofit space. And she said, oh, well, we have a job at the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Do you want to apply? And I did, and I was there for 11 years.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the MDA, as we know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people may be familiar with Jerry Lewis Telethon, right? Jerry's Kids, right? And the MDA, and the cause is the MDA, right?
Supporting neuromuscular disease, so
Right.
muscle diseases, yeah.
So tell us about that. What was your entry point into that role? What was your job description when you got there?
Yeah, so I started in the Long Beach office. I had always worked in Orange County, so it was a little bit, different for me because I didn't necessarily have a network in LA County. But I went in as a district director. I oversaw some program coordinators, fundraising coordinators, and some administrative staff and program staff. So when I was doing the recruiting at CoreLink, I was the operations manager. So I had some management experience, as well as at Enterprise. I was promoted as an assistant manager.
You were my manager.
I was Mike's boss at one point. We won't go into the details about him checking the surf instead of coming back to the office, but we can talk about that later. But
you were very tolerant.
I'd like to think that you were helping me be patient for my children.
Yeah,
so.
okay.
But I all I knew was sales. A little bit of my fundraising experience was asking family and friends when I was running some races. But I kind of was really a fish out of water for the sake of knowing how to run a nonprofit.
Did they give you any training on how to get funds? Did they give you training? Did you go shotgun with another salesperson to go out and make calls?
Really trial by fire, because I had the sales experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be honest, nonprofit, it's sales. A fundraiser is a salesperson. And so I had that experience. But the great thing about MDA is that they have been around forever and ever, and had already had very concrete, strategic, well-known fundraising events already put in place.
Like fill the boot with the firefighters?
Fill the boot with the firefighters, the shamrocks, you go to the market.
Oh,
and,
the shamrocks, that's right,
yeah.
at the supermarket.
Exactly. You want to help send a kid to camp, you give them $1.
A lot of people have ripped off that idea, the shamrocks.
Yes, MDA was the first,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people have imitated.
Yes.
And so I was fortunate in that regard that I sort of just slipped into something that was already built for me. So then as I started to feel more comfortable knowing what I was doing, then I was able to get a little more creative to look for different ways to fundraise.
Right.
So
awesome. And so what were some of those ways? What were some, so give me the example. The real thing that I want to dig into here is, how do businesses go about choosing charities in your experience, right? From your end of the view, and then how do you go about getting in line to persuade them to use your charity, right? To use your philanthropy.
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why people get involved, and you'd like to think that the main reason is because they know somebody. They know somebody who has a muscle disease. They know somebody who has cancer, so they'd support maybe the American Cancer Society, or, they were homeless at one point, and so they're going to support Habitat. But really, the bottom line is that I've seen is that the reason why they get involved is because a friend asked them to get involved. So I've been invited to a variety of different fundraising events, galas or backyard, barbecues or that sort of thing. And I had no clue what the charity was or what they did. I was just there because, I was asked to go. And so then I heard the story and I got excited about the charity. Maybe just like I said, I met that little boy when I was doing the team and training, Leukemia Society running, and I got motivated to support them, even though I've never met anybody with leukemia before, or at the time I hadn't. I certainly have now, but bottom line is...
the companies, what do they go through? What are they looking for? Joe Blow corporate company, right? They generally have some philanthropy, do they not?
Well, you'd like to think that, and we are getting better about it. Especially here in Orange County, there's a lot of
the proverbial we as in the corporate culture.
Yes, the corporate culture is realizing now that they are going to have to change in order to keep quality staff, to recruit millennials, to get people in.
This is a very interesting topic here. So
Yes.
This isn't just out of the goodness of their own heart necessarily, or that the leadership executives have a cause that they want to get behind, or a team building kind of thing where they want to build company culture.
All and above, yes, a lot of that. But
now it's becoming, we need to cater to the new younger generation, which has a very much has an attachment to a cause and working for a purpose, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we just had this conversation about my oldest son.
We did.
And he reached out to you just the other day.
Yes, he did.
Because he's looking for something of value in his life, right?
Absolutely. And so there are wonderful, wonderful organizations out there that have made it their mission to give back in their communities. Some of these people have gone willingly because they've had staff that have come in and said, this is what we need to do. And other corporations are coming about it willingly, but because they saw, wait a second, my staff person just left to go work for this other company, and they give them paid volunteer hours, or they get to go and do these team builders to support their community, or they're going to these fun golf tournaments, or they're going to these fun, galas. And so you also, a company, when they tie themselves to giving back, there is the Cone report will show that 86% of people who see that a company that aligns themselves with a charity is trustworthy, somebody that you want to support. And so more people are more inclined to go and buy from you when they see you're doing that, even if you are a little bit more expensive.
Okay. So our company here, SidePath, is aligned. Jim Andronico is aligned with the Child Development Learning Center. It has to do with speech and language for kids,
Nice.
and he's on a board. And many of us have helped participate in that, and we fund a golf tournament. And we bring our clients to it, right,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fun way to get clients involved. And there's
Absolutely.
a big auction every year that we go to, and that's super fun. And so I'm familiar with the concept, but I think that's an interesting angle now that companies are looking to do that because the youth are asking for it, right?
Yeah. Corporate social responsibility is what it's called, CSR. It's not a new concept, but it is something that is taking a little while for people to fully embrace. A lot of businesses will think to themselves, or people, think to themselves, oh gosh, if I give money to this company, it's taking away from, or excuse me, if I'm giving money away to this nonprofit, giving a donation to this nonprofit, that's money that I could be using to invest back in my business. That's money that I could be using to, I don't know, buy a new car. Or, the people think that they can't give, but I will tell you, you will speak to business owners out there, small business owners, large business owners, the more they're giving, the more they're getting. Charles Antis from Antis Roofing Waterproofing, he is a perfect example of that.
That's a local Orange County company.
Local Orange County company. They've got offices now in the Inland Empire in San Diego as well. But so it's a roofing company, right? So they say it's not fun to work there. Like, who wants to go work at a roofing company, right? But they have like something, I don't know, 95% retention rate or something like that, because they've made it their mission to engage in their local nonprofits. Katie Rucker and her sister Jenny Denham from McKinsey Corporation, same thing. Super small company. They only have 12 to 14 different people, but they allow all of their employees to pick their charity of choice, and they'll write a check, to that charity of choice. It engages the staff, makes them feel good that they're working for a company that cares. And, all these business owners, Charles, Katie, and Jenny, will tell you, the more we're giving, the more we're getting back.
Oh, for certain. And for team building, right? Let's get real. There's a lot of initiatives that go on. People spend lots of money as companies trying to develop their teams, especially when they get into different work group teams, right? They try and make sure that they're humming on all cylinders and doing things differently. There's no better way to do that than to rally around a charity, rally around some cause, right? And
Absolutely.
so that's super important. And I see that happening out there in companies. But how is it that you interface with these companies? Do they have to have an initiative that for you to get involved, or do you just start from scratch in some places?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
tell me
Yeah.
tell me how you go about it.
Well, it's different now that I've been in this space for 17 years than it was before. Before, I took the full salesperson strategy model, where I would do all this research on the company. I would see, a lot of people didn't at the time back then have a area focus or a foundation page or any of that. So I'd have to look in the business journal or look in the newspaper to see, gosh, how are they seen in the community? Like, have they screwed up recently and they might need some good
Good PR?
some good
Yeah, how
PR?
interesting.
Have they what's the size of their business? Where are they located? Those types of things. And then so when I'd go in, especially with MDA, like, I already had my briefcase full of ideas of how they could fundraise. But that didn't necessarily work for me, because it was like, here, salespeople, let me go in there, let me throw up all over you and tell you what you can do, and this is the way you're going to do it. And I was trying to fit them into this mold of what I wanted them to be to give back. And that took time for me to realize that it was like, look, go in, have a conversation with these people, find out what's important to them, find out what they would be excited about doing, either individually or with their team, and then build something around them that way. And then also, at this stage in my career, that when I'm sitting down with these people and I'm hearing what it is that they like and what they want and what they care about, it may not be, the organization that I support, or it could be me, but it's also somebody else too. So I am constantly network or introducing these companies, these people to my nonprofit peers, because we're all in it together. We can all support each other. And I know just exactly what I said just a couple minutes ago. The more I give, the more I'm going to get. I can't be afraid of these are my people and clutching onto them and not letting them go. I need to be comfortable with introducing them to Debbie at Make a Wish, or Chris over at Habitat, or Jennifer at
Sure, that just
Project
makes
Hope
good
Alliance.
sense. And
Yeah,
if we're talking about sales, referring people on to other people in your network is always a good. It sounds counterintuitive, right?
yeah,
Sounds like you're losing an opportunity, but what comes around goes around. We all know
absolutely.
that term, and that really does come around in this world, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so you were gracious enough a few years ago to, what was it, a few years ago? It might have been last year. We did an event at the OCTP at the Orange County Technology
Hmm.
Professionals Group,
Yep.
and you came and spoke, and there were a couple other nonprofits there.
Mhm.
We had Tony Everett,
Yeah,
right, from Pure Game there,
absolutely.
and we talked about the business there, and that was one of the better reviewed OCTPs we've had.
Interesting.
People were very interested in the concept of giving and how they could bring it and apply it to their businesses. And I thought that was refreshing. And
Yeah,
so
for
there's
sure.
definitely a world here for it. And it comes down to, it sounds like you matured over your 17 years of what you're doing now. Now it's way more into the network, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. How do you build a network and how do you give to get?
Well, any person in the development field, the nonprofit development field, will tell you that we spend a lot of time eating and drinking because there are so many different events that I can go to, and I do because the more people know me, the more people trust me, the more people are going to listen to where I say, they should support, or where they, what's the best use of their donation. And so I was told, gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago by Wing Lam from Wahoo's. Wing,
Wing's the owner of Wahoo's Fish Tacos.
yes, he was a big supporter of MDA's Gift of Hope Gala several years, or many years ago. And that's how I know him. But ran into him again, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, you need to start putting yourself, or attending other nonprofits events, because not only will you get to meet the people who are giving, but they'll also see you as somebody who cares about your community, that you're there giving back as well, and they'll see you as part of the tribe. And so I started to invite my nonprofit peers to events that I was holding. They would invite me to events that they were holding. And so we got to obviously become friends with each other, but also get to really know what the mission, each one of our missions, and how we could support each other. And so it really has just completely turned into um, a networking opportunity, not a sales opportunity. I mean, it really is me putting myself in a place where being strategic about it, right? I mean, I'm not going to just go to some, I don't know,
Sure, it has to be
random
the right. It
event.
has to be the right event,
The
right? There
right
has to be the
event.
right people there.
Exactly. And so making sure that I introduce myself, making sure that I introduce them to other people, and then following up with them, at a later time, and seeing how we can get together to talk about what matters to them.
I'm smiling because that's everything for where I'm at, and right, and
Yeah.
in my life and my business, and it's all about the network of people. And it used to be all about that tactical. How can I get in front of the right people? And make my agenda their agenda, and
Hmm.
that's not at all what's happening today. And that's coincidentally, business has never been better, right?
Yeah,
On both of our
absolutely.
behalfs. And so, very interesting takeaway here. It's about the network and it's about doing things for other people with no expectation of what's in it for you. And what
Absolutely.
ends up happening in the long run is that if other people get taken care of, you generally get taken care of in spades,
Yep,
right? And so
absolutely.
that's how that works. Let's go down the timeline a little bit. So, You after MDA, you worked for the Child Abuse Prevention Center.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
I sat on your board there for a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Short period of time there, and then went from there to the Ronald McDonald House.
The Ronald McDonald House in Orange County here. So up at Chalk in Orange, right?
Yeah. So
tell everybody what they do.
So the Ronald McDonald House provides a home for families with critically injured or ill children who they want to be close to their kids. If one of our kids were sick, right, we'd take them to the best children's hospital, right? That could be in the city of Orange, that could be in the city of Los Angeles, that could be in the city of Boston. And so we are going to get there and do whatever we can for our kids to see, the doctor that's going to save their lives ultimately, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean once we get there that we have a place to stay. That doesn't mean that we have the means to pay for a hotel or the means to buy dinner every single night in, this major city. And so the Ronald McDonald House provides that opportunity for these families to be close, have a safe place to stay, which is walking distance to the hospital, have a meal prepared for them, in the morning and in the evening. And so, I was there for 4.5 years and met some really wonderful people. And they're in a capital campaign right now to double the size of the house because the Children's Hospital of Orange County is growing tremendously.
It's booming. They just built a huge another wing there.
Well, the mental health facility, which was so needed. They've also opened the Thompson Autism Center. So anyway, the house will always have a very special place in my heart.
I went to a golf tournament that you brought me to, mm-hmm. and had an opportunity to meet an individual during a round of golf who was a fairly well-off individual and kind of changed the framework for what they do there for me, and said that it wasn't about a free place to stay by any means. He got blindsided, had a very healthy 13-year-old child have a heart condition, all of a sudden had a heart attack. It's not supposed to happen to a 13-year-old kid. Mom and dad are living bedside with a kid for weeks on end, right? Yeah. With no end in sight. The house became a sanctuary for them to be able to come take a break from the hospital, get a meal, talk with other parents, talk with other professionals. And he was an advocate, and he was forever indebted, right? Yep. And it wasn't until the OCTP that I had another very close friend of mine, mm-hmm. Rob, who shared his experience with his child with us as well in the same scenario, blindsided, what are we going to do? And they provide this service for them, and so they're indebted. And so good work at the Ronald McDonald House. Yeah. So now you're in a very different space, yes. Right? So it's still in the nonprofit. And first of all, before we go into CASA, let's talk about what is a nonprofit, right? Let's mm-hmm. define what it is. So there's a 401c3. Is that what it's technically called?
501c3.
501.
Sorry, for a second there, I was confused. I knew that didn't sound right. That's a 401, okay?
501.
Yes, 501c3. Yes.
That's a distinction.
Yes. Though that is the type of organization that I have always worked for.
Which is a tax designated vehicle, right?
Yes.
Where we can write it off.
So we are not in the business of making a profit. We are in the business of making, requesting funds and then using that for programs. And so folks who make a donation to a nonprofit it is tax deductible, and they're supporting, a social justice, a mission, a healthcare organization. My brain is a little scattered right now because I listened to the most amazing webinar this morning all about impact investing and how a lot of nonprofits are moving. A lot of for-profit organizations are basically taking away the nonprofit model to be able to solve these problems. But anyway, so
there's different ways of thinking about it, right?
Lots of different ways to think about it.
We commonly refer to it as a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
And that qualifies under the 501c3.
Yes.
corporation,
Yes.
which allows you to write taxes or give donations and have them be tax deductible.
Exactly.
Right? And so companies are incented to do that, and that's where some of this comes into play.
Absolutely.
So that's the definition of a nonprofit. But at any rate, you've recently moved to a company, well, not so recently, but you've been with a company here called CASA.
Yep. So court appointed special advocates. It's a little confusing because our acronym is CASA, but we are not a house. We are an organization that was started in Seattle. They're, in the, I think, 1977. And we were founded by a judge who was working in the dependency courts for children that had been, placed into the foster system, removed from their homes for a variety of different reasons, and mostly neglect, abuse, and abandonment. And he realized that this was an overburdened system and he needed some help. And so he created this organization with some community leaders to bring in volunteers. He knew he needed volunteers to help him do this, somebody who was not paid, somebody who had completely no reason to be there, no ulterior motive to be there other than the fact that they had a good heart and they wanted to help give him a better picture of what these kids were going through and how to, help.
So it's
help
a child
them.
appointed advocate.
Court appointed special advocate.
Appointed.
Yeah. So we are, agents of the court, our volunteers. They have to go through extensive training and background checks, all of that sort of thing, in order to be able to be a part of our program, 30 hours of training. And then they are matched with a child who is in the foster system anywhere from 0 to 21. And they are there to be a voice, provide some meaningful consistency and support to these kids who, quite honestly, are in the foster care system by no fault of their own. A lot of people get confused about the foster system and they think, oh, well, these kids must have done something really bad. They must have, stole a car, or they
just have some parental issues. Parents might be on drugs, or parents might be neglecting, or parents might be too poor to take care of the child and decide to give them up to the system.
Exactly. So these kids, need to have somebody who is in their lives, who is looking out for their best interests while they're navigating the foster system.
Right. And so let's get real here for a minute. If anybody wants to see a breakdown of the system in front of your eyes, there's a very popular Netflix documentary out there right now called The Trials of Gabriel Hernandez, where it's a definite example of where the system on several levels, the police, the foster care system, the legal care system, all dropped the ball on this kid, and he's no longer around. And it's tragic, but it happens. And so the reality here is that our system is overburdened with lots of kids in this system, and you're providing somebody to look out for them, right?
Yeah. So
somebody outside of the system who's got a different, unique set of eyes that's just concerned with the kid's best interest and can say, hey, wait a second, this doesn't sound right.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these people are volunteers. They do not need to be attorneys or have a legal background. This can be anybody who is 21 years of age and has a big heart. That's really all it is. And then they can make it through our training. They can be vetted, background checks, screened, all of everything necessary to make sure.
What kind of time commitment does it take?
Well, the 30 hours, but then once you're matched with your youth, and then just to make it clear too, we have made it a priority here in Orange County to have a one-on-one match. So there could be siblings that are, all removed from the home, but we are not going to put our advocate, our CASA, we call them CASAs, we're not going to put our CASA with more than one child because as a mother of two boys, my parenting is a lot different when I have just Hayden with me, or just Carter, then I have the two of them, right? So we made it a priority. Our board has made it a priority to make sure that we stick with this one-on-one match. So we ask that our advocates will spend 2 outings a month, at least for 2 hours. Then you are required to be doing reporting about what happened during that meeting. We document absolutely everything we see, everything we hear, everything that we're experiencing, so that is going into a court report. And then the child is required to go to court every 6 months as a checkup, and the advocates, our CASAs, are asked to go to those as well. Quite oftentimes, the judge will say, "Is there a CASA in the room?" and will allow that person to speak first, because they're giving a true face to that child. The child doesn't need to be there, and quite often they're not there. It's kind of a boring experience, but it also things that they hear.
Right.
But anyway, so probably we'd say anywhere from 12 to 15 hours a month.
Okay. And so how much legal knowledge do they need to have, or do they get that on the job training?
Yeah, so it's not that you necessarily have to have, a law school degree or anything like that. You get the training that you need from us, and then there's continuing education. We ask that they do 12 hours of continued education after each year within and then we are constantly creating opportunities for the advocates to speak to our case supervisor. Well, they're assigned to a case supervisor, and each case supervisor at CASA has 40 cases that they're working on.
Okay.
So they have the case supervisor they can call and ask any questions at all. A lot of our case supervisors have social work background, and or they were advocates themselves, so they
oh wow, they come back and get back.
They get hired on as staff members. So it's really it's a good group of people that we have there. But no, you don't necessarily have to have a legal.
Yeah, that's good. It makes the barrier for entry easier.
Absolutely.
Right? And so what a need there is, right? Because unfortunately there's a lot of parents who don't parent and if your kid's going to the point where it's in a foster care system, something's really wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
The worst case scenario has happened in order for a child to be removed.
Oftentimes, multiple times, right? And then they've been tossed around between other family members first, and then ultimately into the foster care system, and it's just that the issues become bigger, and the challenge for the child becomes bigger, and then the expectancy of that child to have a normal, decent life after is just reduced incrementally until they get some help and they can really get a friend.
Yeah,
right?
70 to 80% of the prison population were at one point in the foster system.
I knew that was a statistic there.
So, and then 1 of 5 homeless have been in the foster system, and it just goes on and on. Unemployment people, the number of percentage of people who are unemployed were in the foster system.
Yeah.
So it's a broken system. It's overburdened. There's 3,100 kids in the foster system in Orange County alone.
3,100 kids.
Yeah. So people, and it's growing.
And you
so
obviously don't have 3,100 CASAs, or do you?
We do not. But not every single one of those kids. Well, let me reframe that. Just rephrase that. We would love to serve absolutely every single one of those kids, but the courts are referring us sort of the worst of the worst situations. Some of those kids are with family members, and they're thriving and they're doing fine, and so they wouldn't necessarily need an advocate. The kids that we're working with are in desperate need of somebody to be a consistent support in their lives, and so we have approximately 560 matches going on right now. We have about 160 kids that are on the waiting list.
So there's a need. There's folks that can step up here and help out.
Yes, and we just met with the presiding judge to say, hey, it's time to maybe give us some more kids, because the good news is that we had a very generous donor who gave us the funding to do marketing. I've been in the nonprofit world, like I said, for 17 years now. And a lot of people, they just want to fund programming. That's what we know, right? Like, I'm going to write a check and it needs to go to that child to get a wheelchair, or it needs to go to that, Ronald McDonald House so that you can have air conditioning in the room or electricity going on in the house. But there isn't a lot of, or hasn't been a lot of donors who will say, go ahead and take this check and spend it on
Marketing
dollars. Yeah, or go ahead. Exactly. So a lot of let's stick with this part of it, and then I'll jump to the next thing that I was going to say. But we had a donor who gave us a very large donation to focus on marketing, and so we have last year, our last fiscal year, we're able to swear in 199 advocates.
Wow.
It's the highest number yet. We're on path to do even more. 200. Well, we set a goal for 250 this year. So of those 160 kids that are on the waiting list right now, we have about, I think, 80 people who are waiting to have matches. So that waiting list is going to drop significantly, which is amazing. And that's why we're asking the courts to say, hey, look, I know you were holding off because we didn't have the bandwidth, but I think it's time to start referring kids again.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we have those 560 one-on-one matches going on, those kiddos that are on the waiting list, we have a wait list coordinator on staff who provides opportunities for those kids to at least have something going on with us. So we do events with them. We had a beach, a sandcastle building day down at the beach. We had an opportunity for them to come together to do like a cookie decorating class. So, I mean, they're getting something, but it's not really what we want. We want those matches. And so the volunteers are so incredibly important for us to get in the door and get them trained and get them out to the kids. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what a good cause, and again, very timely, because this is one of the most watched documentaries out there on Netflix. Unfortunately, it's kind of gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
But it's just an example of the breakdown and what's happening here, and what you're able to do.
Yeah.
And so what a great cause.
It is great. And let me tell you, I want to tell you a story, because a lot of people, while we're saying this is a great cause and it's great to get involved in these kids' lives, but unless you really truly hear some of the stories, I don't know that it would resonate. I mean, obviously the Netflix show that we were talking about, that was a breakdown of it all. But let me tell you a positive story. So we have an advocate who has been working with her case, a girl. She started working with her when she was 13 years old. She's now 16. And they were getting together, and all of their opportunities to meet, and very involved in making sure that she was getting her homework done, making sure that she was joining, athletics, that she was, making friends, doing all the things that she needed to do. Well, she turned 16 and she got her driver's license, and she borrowed the keys to the car of the foster family that she was living with. And by borrowing, I mean she did not ask. She took the keys to the car.
The proverbial borrowed the car.
And took a joyride. And unfortunately, the police were called, and she was, taken into custody because technically she stole the car. And so they had to hold a court hearing, and our advocate, our CASA, went to the court hearing, and they were deciding whether or not to put this young lady into the juvenile justice system. And the judge said, is there a CASA here? And our advocate stood up and said yes. And he said, tell me about this girl. And she said exactly what I already said. Great girl, going to school, part of the athletic team, making friends, doing everything she needs to do. But she screwed up. And she said, Judge, when my kids were 16, they took the car without asking. And maybe I took their cell phones away, or maybe, they didn't get to go to that party that weekend. But if this child is in the foster system, she screws up, you want to send her to juvie, and so I don't think you should. And he said, you're right. You're absolutely right. He's, so I'm not going to do that. And basically we were able to change the trajectory of this young girl's life because there was somebody who was there advocating for her, and reminding the judge and everybody in that courtroom, kids screw up.
Yeah.
Kids do stupid things.
Yep.
But when you're in the foster system, you don't get to be a kid.
No.
And we made a promise to those kids that we were going to let them have a childhood and take care of them by taking them away from this horrible situation. So let's, stick to our word and make sure that they get to have the life
Right.
that we promised them.
Right.
So
And being a foster kid's not their fault.
exactly.
Right, and that's they've got a mark on them already for something that their parents put them into. Right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, not a good scenario. So
That's what they
good
do.
on you. And
I know, I'm
and-
very excited about this new chapter in my
This
life.
is awesome.
yeah.
So let's go on to the folks that want to know more about this business. What advice do you have around folks that want to marry work to a cause, right?
Are you talking about getting into as
Yeah,
a professional
yes,
nonprofit
yes.
person, or their business marrying to a cause?
Both.
Okay. Well,
First, let's talk about people who might want to work in it, right? So I made an introduction to you to a friend who was thinking about a career in it, right? So
Yeah.
what advice do you have for somebody to do that in that regard? Go for it.
go for it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
need
would
people who
definitely.
care.
They do, but I want to make sure that everybody sort of does their research. I mean, you can look at, from the sky high point of view and say, oh my gosh, they're doing wonderful things and I've got to get involved. But they're just like any business, there are some nonprofits that maybe aren't doing it quite right yet. So do your research. There is some redundancy out there. When I was with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, there are 43 different neuromuscular diseases or muscle diseases under the umbrella. And then they started breaking off. They became, ALS was one of the,
Right.
and so then there was ALSA, and then there was for the Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Community Parent Project, and Cure Duchenne, and so then
Gets competitive.
it gets competitive, and then donors are at a loss when they say, gosh, I really want to help somebody with a muscle disease, but I don't know
Yeah.
where to go. I
yeah.
don't, so
So I paddleboard for the Ocean of Hope, which is for sarcoma cancer, which is a very small subset of cancer. So it's hard to say this is a cancer research group when it's this very small subset. So they get specialized for sure.
Yeah.
John Wayne Cancer Foundation's all around the melanoma, right, and the skin care, skin from sun. So there's a lot of different specialization there.
Yeah, and also for me, personally, I need to be able to know the people that I'm supporting. Like my heart, I have to be tied to it, because to me, it could just be a job every single day, and that's not why I got into this. It's not for me to get a paycheck. It's for me
You
to
want
feel
to measure
really
the impact.
Yeah, and I
You
want to
wanna
feel really
see it.
good about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, back at MDA, I knew tons of families because they were coming to our events, or I was going to summer camp. Obviously, Ronald McDonald House, I got to see people every single day. I was having breakfast with them, or I was playing games with the kids. And now with CASA, I get to meet these incredible advocates who just, we call them our angels, because they're so selfless. And so if you need to be a part of your mission, you need to research that, because some of these organizations are fully focused
they're a little
on
remote. You're
Yeah.
a little removed.
Yeah, exactly.
S-
Science-
Still
yeah.
making an impact, but a little removed
Yeah.
from the people. But for you,
I need to
you
be able
needed
to be
there
in
to
it,
touch
in
and-
the
and
mix.
feel. Okay,
Absolutely.
that's good advice. That's good advice. And
Yep.
so, what if you're a corporation? What if you're a company, and you're looking about where to place your time and effort, your funds?
Definitely ask your employees what they're interested in. So I know that it sounds sort of like labor intensive, because you're going to get everything under the sun, but you have the opportunity to create an environment to just what you're passionate about. You need to know what your staff is passionate about, because you're going to keep them
Sure.
there, and keep them happy. So definitely talk to your team about what they're interested in. And then also find an organization. You can be very strategic about this. Find an organization that aligns with your company mission, company value, company vision. Side path, obviously I know you just said that your CEO, he has sort of a personal mission, which is great, but it is sometimes it's hard to motivate your team because it's just like, oh, here's another thing our boss is telling us to do, you know? So combined with asking your employees what they want to do, find something that aligns with your organizational mission. People hopefully who are interviewing for that organization will already know. They'll say, oh, well, I really like that, we do IT here. So maybe we're going to get involved with building, satellites for kids to have cell phones in Africa. There's so many different ways. But bottom line with the companies,
Get alignment.
And it is, it does help you in that way if you're not giving to 10,000 different organizations, because you're going to get calls from 10,000 different organizations every day.
You may not even make as much an impact with 10,000 as making it with a couple, right?
Exactly.
And the other thing we talked about earlier that I think is really big, and I've been a part of, and several companies, including my clients' companies, have been a part of their drives, is the team building, right? Yep. And so getting camaraderie amongst the team, getting commonality on a cause, and having everyone rally around that cause builds team, builds loyalty to the company, builds productivity, right? And makes everybody happier, right? And Absolutely. So it's awesome.
It is. One last thing, though, too, I would suggest, and while I am definitely not a professional in the financial advisory type of world, but I have seen more and more companies starting a donor advised fund, where they're putting, a little bit of their money in each year, so then they can make thoughtful donations to organizations. And it is a great tax place to put your money, a great way to support your local community. And you can work with ONEOC to help set that up. They used to be the Volunteer Center of Orange County, but it's ONEOC. They can help you. There's also the Orange County Community Foundation that you can work with, who can help sort of get you on the right path to do that. So lots of great resources out there. If you're listening to this and not sure where to start, you can go to both of those organizations and they can help you.
Susan, you're amazing. Thanks for taking the time to come hang out with us on the boardroom sessions.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to connect with you directly, I'm going to leave your email address on the bottom of the show notes here.
And I am very grateful for you to give me this opportunity and to spend time with you. Mike is amazing, and I have learned a lot from him and our mutual friend Dave about being authentic and giving and supporting, and I'm proud to be your friend.
Thank you. The same back at you. And I'm going to shut this down before I start crying. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you. Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to our future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at SIDEPATH.com.